All right. This is, well, it's really late for me, but and I didn't even plan on doing this video, but I've been thinking a lot about Henry Corbin's very provocative quote, which I will read before, uh, I will read this quote from Corbin so that we can kind of, talk about it, reflect about it. And I'm going to be talking about Deleuze and Guattari. I'm going to be talking about Freud, and I'm going to be talking about Hegel and all of this because I feel like they're all pertinent to this conversation. And here we go. So Henry Corbin kind of quotes when he is making a commentary on Ibn Arabi. He says here, um, one of the most subtle phenomena of love is that which I experienced in myself. You experience a vehement love, a sympathy, an ardent desire, an emotional agitation so great as to provoke physical weakness, total insomnia, disgust at all food, and yet you do not know for whom or by whom. You cannot determine the object of your love. It is the most subtle that I have observed in love by personal experience. And then by chance a theophany appears to you in inner vision. Then this love attaches to itself to this mental theophany. Or else you meet a certain person. At the sight, the previously experienced emotion attaches itself to that person as its object. You recognize that this person was the object of your love, though you were unaware of it. Or else you hear a certain person spoke of, and you feel an inclination for the person. Determined by the ardent desire that was you before, you recognize that that person is your companion. This is one of the most secret and subtle presentiments that souls have of things divining them through veils of mystery, while knowing nothing of their mode of being, without even knowing whom they are in love with, in whom their love will repose, or even what the love they feel is in reality. And then he says here, this is also experienced sometimes in the anguish of sadness or in the expansiveness of joy when the cause of it remains unknown. Okay. So I'll stop there. At first I thought, you know, when reading that note, I was like, oh, that doesn't, like, of course I know what my love is. Like, of course I know what my love is towards, right? Um, but there are several ways to look at this. You can look at it after the fact, right? After the breakup, or for example, how just time works in general. Um, Meaning, as we are in love and the more we discover about each other, it the object begins to change, right? Or we start realizing, I'm not going to say the object begins to change, I'll just say this, that we start realizing that, wait a second, who am I really in love with then? What was it that I fell in love with when I first met this person? Because obviously this is not the same person, right? So we can look at it like that, or we can look at it after the fact, meaning, after a breakup or so on. So to now then talk about Deleuze and Guattari. Now it's funny because when I was reading Anti-Oedipus, they talk about desiring machines, which of course is such a very obscure, and for me it's just a very obscure type of language to use. But I think reading some Henry Bergson has helped me understand Anti-Oedipus actually a lot more than I anticipated. But to kind of just bring this into the conversation, the reason why or at least my suspicion about the reason why uh, part of Deleuze and Guattari's criticism towards Freud is that when Freud says, "Oh, you desire your mother as a child, and so you want to, metaphorically kill the father," and so on. The reason why Deleuze and Guattari kind of have a problem with this is because they don't like the fact that Freud is looking at the mother as a whole, as kind of like a whole object. They don't like this. So they kind of borrow from, I think, is it Melanie Klein or Anna Freud, whoever came up with the object relations theory. So they kind of borrow from the object relations theory, even though they feel like it's incomplete and that it still tries to appease and format itself in Freud's initial hypothesis. But anyways, the whole point is this. When Deleuze and Guattari talk about desiring machines, they start off very obscurely by saying, oh, you know, desire goes from the, like hand machine to like, the elbow machine to the intestine machine to the heart machine to the lung machine to the mouth machine, right? They sort of just begin through all these connections and disruptions and conjunctions with desiring machines. But they also say desiring machines function best when they are dysfunctional, right? So the fact that they have this dysfunction proves that that's why they work. But what's interesting is that if we take Henry Corbin's notion of love can't discern its object, well, as desiring machines, it would be kind of hard to discern the object because exactly what is desire? What does desire exactly want? When it's going through all these connections, disruptions, and conjunctions, love can't. If we take the aspect of desiring machines, of kind of like, going from this, this machine to this machine, this conjunction, this disruption, love can't really discern its object. So if you look at the mother as all these manifold manifold appearances of machines, right? Like her breast machine, then her her mouth machine, and so on. If you start looking at it like this, then borrowing from Deleuze and Guattari on desiring machines, then love can't really discern its object, can it? Right? What is it exactly that it is desiring? Um, I think they even said in Anti-Oedipus that desire machines desire itself or something. I think so. Um, but so that, for me, that's my fruitful, kind of like my fruitful reading of Deleuze and Guattari. I would suggest that, it's funny because I feel like I feel like when I was reading Anti-Oedipus, initially I was trying to kind of like, contest against kind of like psychoanalysis a little bit. But I also feel that now, now that I've taken a break and I've been doing other things and also kind of like stopped kind of reading Anti-Oedipus halfway through, well, a little bit more than halfway through. I'm actually like probably 100 pages away from finishing it. But what I think is really beneficial is that, I should try to read this in the best light. And I feel like a lot of people don't try to read text in the best light. And I know that's a very ambiguous statement, but I think me bringing this up is reading it in the best light and still kind of, and still staying sincere to the text. So love cannot discern its object, right? So this is the aspect of desiring machines that kind of gives an example, right? This is an example. Now, another example how love can discern its object. I'm kind of going now from a secondary source or through a secondary source. My friend Eric Job, we're having a conversation about this, where he says Freud talks about the object losing itself and refining itself again, right? So again, this aspect of love cannot discern its object if we take it in its form about how it's constantly refining its object. Um, it shows how loosely like love can't really understand what's going on. Um, Another thing about I'll talk about this later because I wanted to talk about repetition from Freud, which I thought was an interesting way to interpret repetition. Um, and so was it now we're going on to Hegel, right? Actually, this aspect of Hegel, I'm not. It's going to be a little bit different, but it's more on the notion of hope that I just recently encountered a very good little passage in Self-Consciousness from Hegel, um, which I will read, and it might actually explain why this tension of love, right? About how love cannot discern its object. Here's the thing. Even though love cannot discern its object, love hopes to discern its object, right? Love hopes to discern its object. And I thought this would be such a good passage to kind of throw in from Hegel in the chapter of self-consciousness. So I'll read it. It says, the hope of becoming one with it must remain a hope. That is to say, without fulfillment and present fruition, for between the hope and its fulfillment, there stands precisely the absolute contingency or inflexible difference, which lies in the very assumption of definite form, which was the ground of hope. I love this specific line or passage because it shows that, you know, love, you can say love should be on the ground of hope, right? Love should be on the ground of hope. And that you can never go with its actual fulfillment, right? And so you must sort of maintain the hope. You could say that in order to maintain the hope is to maintain the love. To maintain the hope of its unity is to maintain the love. And so that sort of requires a lot of things that are implied with it, like work and so on, and having dialogue. So for love to remain on this ground of hope, without its fulfillment and its fruition, I thought was a really beautiful way of kind of like framing how, even though this could be looked as negatively, that this love cannot discern its object. Well, it's not only that love cannot discern its object, it's that love hopes to discern its object. And it's because of this hope that makes love possible. It's because of that impossibility, as I'm pretty sure some of you will quote Lacan. It's because of this impossibility that love is real, that love wants to be in an internal exchange with you. And another way to look at it is, for example, because I've been reading Ibn Arabi with my book club now, which is wonderful. It's been so great. I believe it's, so Ibn Arabi loves using light as a simile for being, but there's this aspect of like radiance, right? Now, radiance is a very interesting idea because radiance cannot really, like, radiance shines on everything, right? It shines on everything. And because it shines on everything, it would be hard to determine exactly what it is actually specifically shining on, if that makes any sense. And of course, I'm using this metaphor as like, just imagine like such a big light, or just imagine like, okay, what is the sun really shining on? It can't really specifically be an object. You could say, oh, well, it's the Earth, but there's so many planets in proximity to the Earth. So what is the sun actually? What is the sun actually shining on? And so if we look at love as kind of like this radiance, this sort of emanation, maybe, I don't know if I feel comfortable using that word, but this sort of radiance, then you can see that it can you would understand that maybe we are the sources or the mediums for this radiance, and that's why it becomes difficult for us to even discern exactly what is shining on it. What are we shining on exactly? And I thought that was I thought that was such a good metaphor to kind of bring up. I mean, hopefully it's a good metaphor. I don't know. I think it is. Um, or it's kind of like demanding for radiance to see where its source is coming from. You could say that. You could do the inverse. You could do the inverse in asking, if you think about a sunlight and there's radiance, it would be like asking, well, if you were radiance, where is your source coming from? You wouldn't really know, because you'd be like, the sun is behind you, right? You are it's like you are the source and not the source at the same time. Um, so there's that. But again, I thought it was really great to bring up this idea of love cannot discern its object, and kind of give us a couple of examples from, Deleuze and Guattari. We have Freud, and I think even I want to say even Freud says that repetition is required for the transference, right? Repetition is required for the transference. But which brings me on another note, a side note, where I wanted to look at repetition differently, where repetition is the renewal of creation over and over again. Because I've been reading again Ibn Arabi, the Sufi knowledge, translated by William Chittick, and I thought for some reason I prefer instead of repetition, I prefer renewal. Right? I prefer renewal, which is an interesting way to look at it. Instead of repetition of the past, you could say it's renewal. This constant renewal of creation. So I thought that was interesting to kind of look at. But anyway, that's a side note. It's a side contemplation to think about. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the video and understand that love cannot discern its object. I mean, I feel like someone's going to try to contest me on that, which is fine. All right. You guys take care.